The question of transparency and the risk of fraud in elections has once again been raised regarding the complex American electoral system. From the Electoral College to the variety of voting methods, along with the influence of media and interest groups, concerns are mounting about the fairness and integrity of the election process. Does the current system genuinely reflect the will of the people, or will it remain a topic of controversy? The U.S. presidential election system is considered one of the most complex in the world. Instead of relying on the national popular vote to determine the winner, the U.S. uses a system known as the Electoral College. Each state is allotted a certain number of electors based on its population, and the candidate who wins the majority in a state receives all of that state's electors. A candidate is elected president when they secure at least 270 out of 538 Electoral College votes. This system allows for a situation where a candidate may not win the popular vote, but still achieve an overall victory through the Electoral College. When a candidate wins the popular vote in a state, the electors from the winning party in that state are responsible for casting their votes for that candidate in the presidential election. In some states, the law requires electors to respect the popular vote results. If an elector does not comply and votes contrary to their state's choice, they are known as faithless electors and may face penalties for this behavior. The complexity of this system has led to debates over transparency and fairness. The question arises as to whether the Electoral College truly represents the will of the entire population. In the past, there have been elections in which the candidate with the popular vote majority lost in the Electoral College, as seen in the 2000 election between Al Gore and George W. Bush, and the 2016 election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. This highlights a lack of transparency where the final result does not fully reflect the will of the majority. One essential factor to ensure the transparency of an election is the voting and vote counting method. In the U.S., there are multiple forms of voting, such as in-person voting, mail-in voting, and electronic voting. While these options facilitate voter participation, especially in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, they also raise concerns about the risk of fraud and errors. Mail-in voting became particularly popular during the 2020 presidential election due to the pandemic. However, this method sparked controversy, with doubts arising about whether mail-in ballots were counted accurately and fairly. There are concerns that mail-in ballots could be vulnerable to external influences, such as lost ballots or interference by individuals or organizations with political motives. A notable example is the 2020 election, where then-President Donald Trump repeatedly voiced doubts about the legitimacy of mail-in ballots, suggesting that this method could be susceptible to fraud. The U.S. presidential election 4 years ago was arguably one of the most controversial, with some voting precincts experiencing technical and human errors, leading Trump and his supporters to claim that the election was stolen. On social media, numerous accounts have shared articles questioning an unusual increase in votes for Democratic candidate Joe Biden. These claims have fueled accusations that Democrats were attempting to steal the election in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. One article reported that Biden received 138,399 votes counted in Shiawassee, Michigan, while Trump received none. However, this figure was later adjusted to be more realistic, with Shiawassee officials explaining that the discrepancy stemmed from a typing error. Shiawassee's election clerk, Abby Bowen, told the New York Times that Biden's vote count in the county had accidentally been inflated by an extra zero. The conservative digital magazine Federalist pointed out this data error, but questioned whether it was simply a typo or a clumsy attempt to boost Biden's votes. After his defeat in the 2020 election, Donald Trump frequently expressed concerns that a lack of transparency in voting and counting might have led to his loss. He accused others of attempting to steal the U.S. presidential election in battleground states like Pennsylvania, implying that Democrats were to blame. Speaking at a rally in Pennsylvania on November 3rd, Trump stated that many fraudulent individuals are attempting to seize the election result, implicitly targeting Democrats. He added, "Look at what's happening in your state every day. They talk about extending deadlines and other things," seemingly referring to reports of some Pennsylvania election offices extending their working hours over the weekend to allow voters to submit mail-in ballots. In fact, Trump's concerns were not entirely unfounded. In Colorado, authorities reported they were investigating potential mail-in ballot fraud. At least 12 mail-in ballots had been stolen and then submitted as fraudulent votes. At a press conference in Denver, Colorado's Secretary of State Gina Griswold confirmed that a ballot fraud scheme was uncovered after several voters reported receiving notifications that their ballots had either been received or required correction due to signature discrepancies. At least 3 such cases were identified. So why is transparency in U.S. presidential elections often called into question? One key factor affecting election transparency in the U.S. is political funding and interest groups. Presidential candidates require strong financial backing to fund advertising campaigns, organize events, and reach out to voters. Major corporations, interest groups, and wealthy donors often contribute large sums to support candidates they believe will benefit their interests. Concerns about transparency and fairness arise when powerful interest groups can directly influence candidates' policies once elected. When a candidate receives funding from a specific interest group, they are likely to implement policies favoring that group if elected, compromising fairness and impacting lawmakers' decisions. This diminishes public trust in the election's transparency and integrity. In today's digital age, social media plays a significant role in shaping voter perceptions and can strongly impact election outcomes. Candidates often use media to build their image and reach voters. However, social media has created a new channel for spreading misinformation, fake news, and biased information. One of the biggest issues with social media is the rapid spread of false information. Voters can be easily influenced by inaccurate information, leading to misguided voting decisions. Although social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter have tried to control misinformation by flagging and removing false content, these measures are not strong enough to prevent it entirely. For instance, in the 2016 presidential election, there were allegations that Russia used social media to interfere with the election to help Donald Trump win. Investigations revealed that fake accounts and targeted advertising campaigns had been used to influence voters' perceptions. We might recall the rumors in 2020 that suggested numerous deceased individuals somehow voted, though this turned out to be baseless speculation. The government concluded that cases where a father and son shared the same name and address contributed to unfounded rumors that deceased individuals had voted for Biden. From the above analysis, it is clear that the U.S. presidential election system involves numerous complex and controversial elements. While there are measures to ensure transparency, this system still has limitations and risks, ranging from the complexity of the Electoral College and the potential for fraud in various voting methods to the influence of media, social media, and interest groups. All of these factors impact the election's transparency and fairness. To improve transparency, the U.S. could consider reforming the Electoral College system, enhancing security in voting systems, tightening controls on political funding, and establishing clear regulations for vote counting and legal disputes. Additionally, increasing voter awareness of misinformation and creating a strong legal system to handle election-related violations could further bolster election integrity.